Hello everybody, it is I, Captain Oblivious Mist, and today we're going to be doing the complete history of the Campania and the Lucania. I say we're doing the complete history today. I'm doing another compilation. Once again, do not worry, not my video for this week. My video for this week is the Vedic, which should hopefully be coming out within like a few hours maybe of this compilation being uploaded. Fingers crossed. But so without any further ado, let's get into the compilation.
She had a very short life as she quite quickly became outdated. But more details on this ship in one of my future videos where I plan to make her full history of this ship.
Well, that was half a year ago. Better keep to my word. The 19th century, travel on the North Atlantic was about as comfortable as sailing in a cardboard box. As there wasn't a lot of room, food tasted like dog crap, and the accommodations in steerage was usually bare and wet. Or at least it was before this guy came around. Now this person is Thomas Ismay, and if you're a frequent viewer of this channel, first of all, thank you. Second of all, you might recognise his name from this video. Now he's got an idea to improve the conditions on ocean liners. So he makes his first ship, the SS Oceanic, a ship great for her time. Now elsewhere, the shipping line Cunards hears about this, and so they decide to do what White Star is doing, but better, thus beginning a back and forth between the White Star and the Cunard lines, which now brings us up to the 1890s, where Cunard is designing a new ship to compete the White Star line, especially the White Star's new Teutonic and Majestic. So, work begun on two new ships. These ships were going to be called Campania and Lucania, and guess which one I'm finally covering. The Campania was to be financed by the British government, but there was one condition. The Campania had to be easy to convert into an armed piece of shit. I mean an armed merchant cruiser, in the case of war. As for who was building her, contracts for Lucania and Campania were awarded to Fairfield Shipbuilding Company, as she was going to be powered by two of the largest 5-cylinder triple expansion engines that was run by 12 double Scotch boilers, and on a stern was two 3-bladed propellers, producing a speed of 25 knots. But there was one slight problem: vibrations, which I bet was really fun. As well as this, sea spray was becoming a major problem during this time. Thankfully, her sister ship, the Lucania, was still under construction, and due to the success of the Lucania and her changes, this led to the Campania being brought in for a slight refit, which made a few changes. The main one being a fully enclosed plating on the promenade deck to stop sea spray, and a new forward design that would later be echoed by the Lusitania and the Mauretania. Now, for her interiors, as they were so stunning that they get their own section. Campania had some of the best interiors of her time, with ensuite cabins coated in dark oak or mahogany, which was thickly carpeted, and in the first class entrance hall was decorated with gorgeous French Renaissance style. As for the first class dining saloon, she was 3 decks high and apparently had her ceiling painted in red, white and gold, supported by iconic pillars, and the walls were panelled in Spanish mahogany. And then there was the smoking room, decorated and panelled in heavy oak, surrounding the first open fireplace aboard a passenger ship. But her interiors was only a sliver of what makes the Campania special, as she has a career, which brings me to the next part of the video. The Campania had her maiden voyage on the 22nd of April 1893, which went off without too many problems. She even won the Blue Ribbon Band, but it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows, as in 1900 she collided with a bark called the Embleton. Unfortunately, the bark sunk, but somehow the Campania survived, and the very next year she would receive a Marconi wireless system, and soon after the Campania and the Lucania would make history for being the first passenger ships with a bulletin.
Then in 1905, Campania would become the first ocean liner to have a permanent radio connection to all coastal stations across the world, marking an end of isolation at sea. Not too long after the Campania was completed, in fact about 4 years later, the Germans launched a new ship called the Kaiser Wilhelm the Grosse, which began the downfall of the Campania, as the Cunards decided to build 2 new ships to compete with the Germans. These ships would slowly begin to kill the need for the Campania and a sister, but things didn't really go pear-shaped for the Campania until 1914, when the Aquitania started her career, causing the Campania, by then the last of her class, to be laid up, where she was then sold for scrap. Just kidding, as soon World War I would break out and the Aquitania would be pulled into war service, and this brought back the need for the Campania, but at this point she was too outdated and ended up being laid up and sold for scrap, bringing an end to this once great liner. Just kidding again, as the British Admiralty needed ships, so they bought the Campania just in time before she could be scrapped. She was planned to be converted into an armed merchant cruiser, but after realising how useless armed merchant cruisers were, the British Admiralty decided to instead turn her into an aircraft carrier, beginning her new life as a warship, as she officially was commissioned on the 17th of April 1915, and later that year on the 6th of August 1915, for the very first time a plane left her deck, and by October she had done this 3 more times. But unfortunately, in 1916, the Campania missed a signal from the Grand Fleet to depart Scapa Flow. Yes, the very same island where the RMS Oceanic unfortunately grounded in 1914. But back to the Campania, as she left 2 hours behind everyone else, yet somehow she began to slowly take over the Grand Fleet. But before Campania could reach her destination, she was ordered to turn back, as German U-boats had been reported in that area, and she had no escort. So the Campania turned back round to Scapa Flow, where she remained until she was deemed unfit for duty, and soon after, in 1918, the Campania was transferred to Rosyth. On the morning of the 5th of November 1918, the Campania was laid up when a massive gust of wind caused her to drag anchor, causing the Campania to float into the path of the HMS Royal Oak, where she collided with her bow. Then afterwards, she floated into the path of the HMS Glorious, where her power was shut off due to the earlier collision with the Royal Oak, where she then began to sink by her stern. She eventually sunk 5 hours after breaking free, and thankfully her crew was picked up by nearby ships after she took a final plunge. But unfortunately, the Campania did not survive, and the Campania, the ship that had evaded death so many times, had finally kicked the bucket in, I guess you could say, a glorious demise. Not too long after her sinking, the First World War came to an end. As well as this, a court inquiry was held to find out who was to blame for her sinking, which they found the watch officer to be the main cause of her demise, as he had failed to drop the Campania's second anchor after she'd started to drift. As for the wreck herself, she was later blown up by port authorities as she was a danger to other ships sailing through. Then later in 2000, the remains of the Campania was protected under the Protection of Wrecks Act, which was revoked in 2013 when her remains were redesignated as a historical marine protected area under the Marine Scotland Act of 2010. In the late 19th century, the Cunard line was competing with the White Star line over dominance on the North Atlantic, leading Cunard to order 2 new sister ships. These ships were the Campania and the subject of this video, the Lucania. These ships were partially funded by the British government under the condition that these ships were designed to be converted into armed merchant cruisers, and they'd be constructed by Fairfield Shipbuilding Company. They'd be powered by two 5-cylinder triple expansion engines driving two triple-bladed propellers, giving her a surface speed of 22 knots. The Lucania had 16 watertight compartments, which she could stay afloat with any two of those flooded. But I doubt you'd want to be even in the ship with one of those flooded unless you want a new swimming pool. But anyways, back to the video. She had some of the best accommodations of her day, especially in her first-class public rooms and en suites, as they were all mostly panelled in mahogany, oak and stained wood. She was mostly decorated in the French Renaissance style, which in my opinion looks good. And the best room in the ship by far is the same one that I loved on the Campania, which was a dining saloon, with a white and gold ceiling with a massive dome. She just looks stunning. In fact, you know what? I'm going to demolish my house right now, right this second, on camera. And I'm just going to build the Lucania's dining saloon in here. Let's go ring up the company. Hello, yeah, it's me. Yeah. Can I please have a large wrecking ball and a time machine? Yeah, yeah. How much? I'm a YouTuber. Do you take exposure? Hello? Ah, crap. Hi, I am back with my boring old recording wall. Turns out the cost of destroying your house and going back in time and stealing an entire dining saloon out of a ship is expensive. About 6.7 trillion quid. Expensive. Unfortunately, this video does not have that budget. Damn it. On the 2nd of September 1893, she left on her maiden voyage, which kick-started her early career. Which started off with a bang, as on her second voyage she won the Blue Riband, which gave her the title of the fastest ship afloat, which lasted for a very long time of 5 years. But anywho, on the 15th of June 1901, the Lucania got a title she physically cannot lose unless someone goes back in time, that title being she was the first Cunard ship to be given a Marconi wireless, and in fact was such a good ship that the inventor of the wireless system called, oh Jesus, I'm going to butcher this name, Guglielmo Marconi, personally decided to use the Lucania for experiments in October of 1903. Then, on the 10th of October 1903, she would become the very first ship to have news centre, which would soon lead to most, if not all, Cunard ships having their own news bulletin. But these times would not last forever. Her downfall would begin when the North German Lloyd built the Kaiser Wilhelm the Grosse in 1897, which was more luxurious than anything Cunard had to offer. Then, a few years later, the White Star Line's second Oceanic hit the waves, and planning begun on 4 new ships for the White Star Line, which led to Cunard wanting to combat this, so they had the RMS Lusitania and Mauretania built, which were so fast that on the Lusitania's maiden voyage she overtook the Lucania. This would prove to be the final nail in the coffin for the Lucania, as in 1909 it led to the Cunard line doing this.
I don't want to play with you anymore.
And they then decided to lay up the Lucania at the Talkington dock in Liverpool. But hey, at least she didn't catch fire and partially sink at her berth. Right, guys? Oh, dear. Well, on the 14th of August 1909, the Lucania caught fire and partially sunk, leading her to be sold for scrap 5 days later. This was the end of the tale of one of Cunard's best ships.